Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on IATF 16949. Today we'll be discussing the transition strategy and the changes to Rules 5th edition. My name is Shannon Craddock, and I'm the Programs and Accreditations Manager here at PJR. I'm also an IATF 16949 lead auditor and a veto power for Perry Johnson Registrars, one of the individuals making certification decisions for automotive clients. Today's webinar is the first in a four-part series on the IATF 16949 transition, changes to the rules, and most importantly, an overview of the changes to the standard as well, which I know many of you are interested in. I personally believe that the changes to the standard are considerable and significant. So it's very important for organizations to be well versed in these changes, and the transition window is rapidly closing. As of October 1st, 2015 or 2017, all audits need to be to the new version of the standard. So let's get into the transition strategy. A little bit about its history. The transition strategy was presented at the IATF Global Stakeholder Conference in Rome, Italy in April 2016. That was its original presentation. The intent of the strategy was to explain the process for existing certified organizations to upgrade to IATF 16949, as well as a process for new organizations to get certified the very first time. Feedback and comments received at the Global Stakeholder Conference in Rome led to a revised transition strategy being released in August 2016. The transition strategy is available in two places, one, AIAG.org, or at IATFGlobalOversight.org. As the IATFGlobalOversight.org website has a lot of other valuable resources, especially for certified organizations, that's where I personally go. So at AIAG.com, right here you can download a copy of the transition strategy. You'll automatically get the latest version by clicking download here, as it has since been revised. At globaloversight.org, you can download the latest version of the transition strategy under latest news. So as we get deeper into the transition and new scenarios present themselves, questions are going to arise. And the 5 IATF oversight offices in the United States, the United Kingdom, Germany, France, and Italy are committed to sharing the questions amongst the oversight offices, agreeing to a common response and publishing the responses for all the IATF recognized certification bodies and certified organizations to understand. Several new frequently asked questions will be released in early October. An organization should subscribe to the mailing list on IATF Global Oversight to receive automatic email notifications when changes related to the scheme are posted. So here, highlighted in yellow, you can see subscribe to our mailing list. IATF has launched a training process. This began in mid-December 2016 to qualify certification body auditors to conduct audits to IATF 16949. And by June 30th, 2017, auditors were required to pass exams in the standard itself and to the changes in Rules 5th edition, and all auditors have done that. If an auditor did not do that, they are prohibited from auditing in the scheme any longer. PJR, as a certification body, has already released communication to our clients and auditors about the transition process. And our scheduling department is working with you to successfully schedule your transition audit. I encourage you, if you're going to transition in 2018, to get your 2018 transition audit scheduled as you scheduled your 2017 audit. So today's presentation is going to provide guidance to certified organizations on how you should be applying the transition process to your organization. And it also helps new organizations seeking certification for the first time. So what should you be doing? Well, number one, you should have already started. You should have already bought a copy of IATF 16949. It has been available since October 2016. However, you will also need to purchase a copy of ISO 9001 2015. Both standards are needed to achieve certification to IATF 16949. So you actually have to buy two documents, and this is different. So if we look in IATF 16949, in the foreword, which is on page 7, it says, IATF 16949, along with applicable automotive customer-specific requirements, ISO 9001 2015 and ISO 9000 2015, define the fundamental quality management system requirements for automotive production and relevant service part organizations. As such, this automotive QMS standard cannot be considered a standalone standard, but has to be comprehended as a supplement to and used in conjunction with ISO 9001 2015. And ISO 9001 2015 has to be published is published as a separate ISO standard and has to be purchased separately for that reason. So if you're working on transitioning and you don't have a copy of ISO 9001 2015, you're missing a lot of the new requirements that you have to meet. I encourage you, if you are an automotive organization, not only to listen to this 4-part series, which will be conducted over the next 3 to 4 weeks, but also listen to PGR's webinars on ISO 9001 2015, so you have your arms around those changes as well. So after you have a copy of the standards, which you should already have, you need to perform a gap analysis to IATF 16949 and ISO 9001 2015. This should have been done by the end of 2016 for any manufacturing sites in your scope, as well as any supporting functions. The IATF has not published a common gap analysis tool. Organizations need to create their own. Certification bodies are not performing gap analyses for their clients. AIAG, however, has published a gap analysis tool, and you can download this from their website. After you've completed your gap analysis, you'll need to develop an action plan to close the gaps between your current quality management system and any new or revised requirements in both IATF 16949 and ISO 9001. As any good action plan should contain timing, key milestones, responsibilities and authorities, and an update as to the status where each item stands. And treat that action plan as a living document. Keep it up to date. You need to be knowledgeable in the IATF transition strategy, and that's what we'll be reviewing today. Understand that the transition process applies to both manufacturing sites and remote supporting functions locations. Read through the strategy to understand how it affects you. Be aware of subsequent changes to the strategy released by the IATF via IATF Global Oversight. And again, the easiest way to do that is to subscribe so you're updated about any changes. And if you have any questions about any of the changes or any of the requirements, please feel free to direct them to Perry Johnson. You need to conduct a full internal systems audit to IATF 16949 and a management review prior to your certification body coming on site to do the transition audit. This is required to show that the quality management system is in compliance to IATF 16949. Now, your internal audit can be accomplished through a previous internal system audit to ISO TS 16949, and then a supplemental audit to cover the deltas in IATF 16949. Or you can do an audit that's brand new that covers all the requirements of IATF 16949 and ISO 9001:2015. Similarly, your management review can be accomplished through a combination of previous management reviews in compliance with ISO TS 16949 and a supplemental delta management review to cover the new requirements. Or you can do a full management review addressing all the ISO 9001:2015 as well as IATF 16949:2016 requirements. The choice is yours. In conjunction with your certification body, you then have to determine which regularly scheduled audit in 2017 or 2018 will be your transition audit. All manufacturing sites and remote supporting functions certified to ISO TS 16949 shall transition to IATF through a transition audit. This transition audit needs to occur at the next regularly scheduled audit in accordance with the allowable timing per Rules 511. So there is a grace period depending on whether you're due for your surveillance or recertification. Your transition audit is going to replace the next regularly scheduled surveillance or recertification audit. We are not doing ad hoc special audits to transition you. These have to be in accordance with the regular timing, your regular certification cycle, whether it's surveillance or recertification. Now, we've been doing transition audits as early as the 1st of January 2017, but are mandatory starting the 1st of October 2017. And there are essentially two strategies for transitioning. One is known as the voluntary transition. And you can voluntarily transition on any audit occurring between the 1st of January 2017 and the 30th of September 2017. And if you're doing this voluntarily, you can either transition or have an audit to the old standard. This is the open window. However, as of the 1st of October 2017, all automotive audits must be to IATF 16949. So let's look at an example of this voluntary transition. Okay, so we have an organization that had its initial audit, its stage 2, in June 2015. Its surveillance 1 was done in June 2016. Now its surveillance 2 is due in June 2017. Now Rules 511 has a grace period. The organization can go up to 3 months early or 1 month late. So this puts us in the March 2017 to July 2017 window. And its recertification would be due in June 2018. No grace period for being late here. An organization has to have their audit by June 2018. They can go up to 3 months early, which would put them in the March 2018 and on window. This organization can choose to transition to IATF 16949 in June 2017 or wait until the recertification audit in June 2018. The voluntary transition, because their anniversary date is before this 1st of October 2017 date. Let's look at a company that would fall under the mandatory transition deadline. Excuse me. So this client's initial audit, their stage 2, ended November 2015, and their first surveillance was done in November 2016. Now, their second surveillance is due in November 2017, and because of this, because it's after the 1st of October 2017, they are required to transition to IATF 16949 at Surveillance 2. So this organization has no option. They have a mandatory transition November 2017. However, all organizations need to be cognizant of the consequences for failure to conduct the transition audit on time. If the transition requirements cannot be met and the transition was replacing a surveillance audit, the decertification process suspension will be initiated. So let's consider that example of the organization that had to transition in November 2017. This organization realizes, oh no, we're not ready. It's November 2017. This suspension process is initiated. This allows another 90 calendar days to schedule and complete an on-site transition audit. However, if you're still not ready within the 90 calendar days, your certificate is withdrawn, and that's because it will already be suspended when you tell us that you're not ready for the November 2017 audit. And you would need to start over with an initial certification audit to IATF 16949. If the timing requirements cannot be met and the transition audit was replacing a recertification audit, the current TS certificate will remain valid until it expires, and then you would need to start over with a new certification audit. So, bottom line, please be ready on your surveillance or recertification audit, your normally scheduled audit to transition in either 2017 or 2018 in accordance with that 1st of October deadline. You cannot transition on a special audit. Certification bodies are not supporting ad hoc special audits to do your transition just because you're not ready. A special audit is anything outside of the regularly scheduled audit in the audit cycle. You also can't transfer and transition at the same time. TS certified organizations cannot change IATF recognized certification bodies and have a transition audit at the same time. And they have in fact put safeguards in place to prevent this from happening. There were a couple exceptions to this rule if an organization signed a transfer agreement with the CB prior to August 2016. Some grandfathering was allowed, but we would be out of that window at this time. So let's talk about what's going to happen during the transition audit. We would conduct your transition audit. There would be a nonconformity management process, as always. Certification decision by the veto power at the certification body, and then issuance of the new certificate. The transition audit is going to start a new 3-year cycle, and that's because the transition audit is equivalent in duration to a recertification audit. So even if you recertified last November, because your audit is due November 2017, you would be recertifying again in accordance with the transition strategy. So the duration of the transition audit is equivalent to a recertification audit. Regular reductions can be applied relative to corporate scheme and no product design. Organizations are required to submit their updated quality manual and any other documented information proving conformity to IATF 16949 and ISO 9001:2015 prior to the start of the transition audit for an off-site document review. If you do not provide this information, we are adding time to your on-site audit to collect this information. few exceptions. All Rules 5th edition requirements for the audit team conducting the audit, nonconformity management, and certification decision will apply. There are a couple deviations, and we'll get through those in the next few slides. But because we're doing a recertification audit, a full system audit, recertification time, if a positive decision is made as a result of the transition audit, you will be granted a new 3-year certificate. Now, if you choose to transition in 2018, keep in mind the risks of your transition audit being too close to the expiration of your TS certificate. Because remember, all TS certificates are expiring September 14th, 2018. If nonconformities are issued at a transition audit, and let's face it, nonconformities are likely to be issued, there's a maximum of 90 days for the nonconformity management process to be completed. Remember, you get 60 days and your auditor gets 30 days to review these and go back and forth with you before we accept them, hopefully by day 90. And then the certification body's veto power gets an additional 30 calendar days for a certification decision to be made. So this means 120 calendar days from the date of your closing meeting. There is a risk that your certificate could expire before this process is completed. So let's look at what could happen if your transition audit is scheduled too close to the certificate expiration date. Now, this organization fell under the voluntary transition, and because their anniversary date was before the 1st of October 2017, in this case it would have been June, they're transitioning in June 2018. However, there's a maximum of 120 calendar days from the end of the audit to make a certification decision, which is going to put them into October. However, their TS 16949 certificate is going to expire September 14, 2018. So the possibility exists that their existing certificate will expire before the new one is issued. And the IATF is allowing certification bodies to make a positive certification decision after this 9/14/18 expiration date, as long as the decision is made within 120 days. And as the schematic on the previous slide shows, this could result in a period where the client's certificate is expired and no valid IATF 16949 certificate has been issued. So consider the risks if you're transitioning perhaps in May, June, July, August, September of 2018. Keep in good communication with your scheduler. Communicate your transition audit dates as soon as possible. Get those dates locked in. The early bird gets the worm, as the saying goes. Please try to schedule both your 2017 and 2018 audits when you speak to your scheduler. This will ensure the most strategic and best dates for your organization and CB get locked in. And again, in summary, what should you be doing? You should have already gotten a jump start and purchased IATF 16949 2016. This can be purchased from AIAG.org. and ISO 9001 2015. This has been available for some time and can be purchased from the ASQ or the International Organization for Standardization itself. Get a contract signed with your CB. We are doing this with clients as they transition. This will happen naturally. Now you could possibly certify to ISO 9001 2015 first. I don't know a lot of organizations that are doing that, however, and it's not mandatory. Perform a gap analysis to IATF 16949 2016, as well as ISO 9001 2015. A great way to become familiar with the requirements is to attend the remaining 3 webinars in this 4-part series, and listen to our many webinars on ISO 9001 2015. That'll help you do your gap analysis, and after your gap analysis, create an action plan to close the gaps, including timing and responsibility and authority. If you're a new organization, decide, hey, are we going to go ISO TS 16949, which is still allowable till the 1st of October 2017, or IATF 16949. Keep in mind, if you choose an initial audit to ISO TS 16949, and again, points 5, 6, and 7 are relative to organizations that are just seeking certification for the very first time, not organizations that are transitioning. Remember, your certificate's going to expire September 14th, 2018. You'll want to confirm your audit date with your certification body as soon as possible, as this window is closing. We've got probably about 2.5 months before that October deadline. Some reductions are allowed for the transition audit days if you're upgrading from ISO 9001 2015. Again, I don't know a lot of companies that are doing that, or the latest version of VBA. And that concludes the first part of today's presentation on the transition strategy. We now are going to talk about the changes to Rules 5th edition. Now, it's most likely that the rules are going to impact the certification body itself. But because these rules impact the certification body, they likely will also influence you as a certified organization because of certain requirements that we're going to flow down to you. So the International Automotive Task Force decided to update Rules 4th edition in parallel with revisions to IATF 16949. So the title remains Rules for Achieving and Maintaining IATF Recognition, but it's at the 5th edition, even though IATF 16949 is at the 1st edition. And the Rules 5th edition changes were mainly to incorporate the 14 existing SIs, 33 existing FAQs that supplemented Rules 4th edition, and then clarify IATF intentions where needed, and then overall make changes to improve the scheme. Again, this is all about continual improvement. The changes in Rules 5th impact certified organizations, organizations looking to become certified for the very first time, as well as IATF recognized certification bodies. So when you're purchasing your IATF 16949 2016 standard from AIAG.org, pick up a copy of Rules 5th edition as well. They've been available since November 1st, 2016. And the changes in Rules 5th edition are applicable as of the 1st of January 2017, regardless of whether you're being audited to IATF 16949 or ISO TS 16949. Keep in mind that this presentation does not cover the existing Rules 4th SIs and FAQs that were incorporated into Rules 5th edition. Rules 4th SI and FAQ documents are available at the Global Oversight website, or they were available until they were archived on the 31st of December 2016. And this is because all those SIs and FAQs have been incorporated into Rules 5th. This presentation's focus is the most significant changes, clarifications, and new requirements affecting certified organizations and recognized certification bodies. So first, the first important change is that OEM customer specified accessory part suppliers are now eligible for IATF 16949 certification. And this is in section 1.0 of the rules. Keep in mind that these accessory parts must be manufactured to OEM specifications and are procured or released by the OEM and are mechanically attached or electronically connected to the vehicle. They can be installed on the vehicle or the powertrain before or after delivery to the final customer. And the reason for this change with accessory parts suppliers is the IATF members agreed it was important to change the eligibility requirements to allow accessory parts suppliers to have their QMS third-party certified. Second most significant change, a manufacturing site supplying to customers requiring third-party certification to IATF 16949, or if you're still going for ISO TS 16949 until October, has to include all automotive customers in your audit. So let's consider a site that supplies to GM, who clearly requires third-party certification to 16949, and Honda, who does not. Regardless, because of Rules 1.0, all manufacturing product manufactured for both GM and Honda have to be included in the scope of your audit. Clarification was needed because the IATF was getting a lot of questions from certification bodies on this. However, this has always been their intent. They have just now made it very clear. The certification body's legally enforceable agreement with the client or our contract or any associated amendments has to include a provision to allow the contract to be extended until all transfer activities to the new CB are complete. So we will advise you, if you tell us you want to transfer, to notify your previous CB about your intent to transfer. So if you come to us, we are going to tell you, hey, let your existing CB know, and you need to notify your existing CB about your intent to transfer to PJR. Your existing CB or your previous certification body shall not use this notification of transfer as justification to suspend or cancel your certificate before the transfer process is complete. However, there must be this valid extended contract in place, and if not, the previous CB can suspend, cancel, or withdraw the certificate. Now, the reason for this change is a strengthening to ensure that an effective transfer process occurs between the two certification bodies. It's got to be a cooperation. Previously, the existing CB would sometimes cancel the existing certificate before the new CB could issue one, which could affect your status with your customers. Clients shall submit the number of employees for the site and all associated remote supporting locations as part of the audit planning process. This is required by Rules 571A. And the reason for this is the IATF believed it was critical that the CB received updated employee counts during the audit planning phase, so we have enough time to make adjustments to the audit duration and avoid costly last-minute changes, especially where travel is involved. Now, this is something that PJR has always required. One of the first things our scheduling department asks is for an updated employee count. Rules 5th edition has also eliminated the ability to terminate an audit due to the identification of major nonconformities, even a lot of them. And this is in Rules 5.9. Initial, surveillance, recertification, transfer, or special audits shall not be terminated. There may be special situations, a natural disaster, an emergency where we do have to terminate an audit. And we still have the right to do that. However, IATF wanted to prevent audits from being terminated for major nonconformities because they want every audit outcome to demonstrate the client's extent of compliance or noncompliance with the requirements. Fourth edition allowed the audit to be terminated if significant or many major nonconformities were identified. This is no longer allowed. The CB's final audit report shall include a written description of interactions with support processes at other sites or remote supporting functions that were audited. This is in Rules 510F, and the reason for this change is a strengthening so that the written report is very clear to the reader who needs to understand where interactions exist and how they were tested during the audit. Rules 511, which relates to nonconformity management, was split into 5 subsections. The client's responsibility for a major NCR, as well as the client's responsibility for a minor NCR. The certification body's responsibility, and then on-site verification of a major, and sometimes on-site verification for a minor nonconformity. Whereas there's no changes to the requirements, this has been reorganized to make it easier to understand and follow. There's been an elimination of redundant requirements for the client to submit root cause and implement a correction within 20 days from the closing meeting of a surveillance audit and a recertification audit where a major has been identified, as this was already covered in the suspension or decertification process in Rules 8.1 and 8.2. There's been an incorporation of the IATF Database's semi-automated transfer checking process. And this has subsequently changed the layout of Rule 7.1.1. There's also been an addition of the certification body or client's failure to complete all the required activities prior to the start of the transfer audit shall result in an initial certification audit. The reason for this change, it was important to separate the transfer requirements related to the semi-automated checking process from the requirements which are performed manually. And they also wanted to ensure that the consequences were very clear when the pre-transfer activities were not completed. There's been a reorganization of the structure of special audits in Section 7.2 to display the list of reasons for a special audit using a bulleted list, which is much more easy to visualize and understand. Eliminated the ability to terminate a special audit. Remember, we want to understand the full extent of compliance or non-compliance. Special audits of a remote supporting function are not entered in the IATF database. It's more of a clarification for a certification body. Changes to 7.2, special audits were made to help improve the structure, eliminate the ability to terminate a special audit, and for clarification. The CB is required to conduct a special on-site verification audit when the decertification process has been initiated due to a special status condition being handed down from an IATF OEM. So for example, if you supplied a Ford and your Q1 is revoked, you're in a status known as Q1 revocation, we would need to go in and do a special audit. These special audits are entered into the IATF database. This requirement has always been the Rules 4th edition practice, but was not previously documented as a requirement. Thank you. That concludes the second part of today's presentation on the changes to Rules 5th edition. And this concludes today's lecture portion of the presentation. I will now open the webinar up to any questions that you may have. As all participants have been muted to ensure sound quality, what I'm going to ask is that you type your questions into the question or chat feature, and I'll answer as many of these as possible before the conclusion of today's webinar. So type any questions into the question feature. I'll answer as many of them as I can. Feel free to ask anything about the IATF transition process, changes to the standard, even though they have not yet been covered formally, or Rules 5th edition. And again, a reminder, over the next 3 weeks, the 19th and 26th of July, as well as the 2nd of August, we'll be conducting the last 3 webinars in this 4-part series. Okay, getting some questions coming in. Okay, I'm getting a question on the standard itself, and to be clear, we haven't reviewed the standard yet, but I'm more than happy to answer these questions in case the person asking the question can't participate in a future webinar. This question relates to 841 in the standard, control of external suppliers. The organization shall determine the controls to be provided to externally provided processes, products, and services. The question, do we have to have the controls listed in one document, or can they be listed in other documents? Yeah, Tim, the controls don't necessarily have to be listed in one document. They can be listed in many documents. Your approved supplier list, your control plans, your POs, whatever works for your system is perfectly appropriate. Chris is asking, will we learn which documented procedures are required in the upcoming sessions? Yes, Chris, you will learn, and I want to be very careful with my word choice here. You will learn what documented processes are required. And you're going to see as we get into next week's presentation that IATF 16949 talks about documented processes and documented information as opposed to procedures. But yes, we will be reviewing that. As an example, because we're already in 841, take a look at 8412. The organization shall have a documented supplier selection process. They don't say procedure, they say process. Somebody is asking, which one do you believe is the biggest change or clause from the previous to the current standard? Good question, Anastasia. I believe that the biggest change, and I'm trying to find it here, is in 85611, temporary change of process controls. You need to identify, document, and maintain a list of process controls that include the primary process control and the approved backup or alternate method. And this is everything listed on your control plan. To me personally, this was the biggest change. To some organizations, this may not be a big change. But as I said when we started today's webinar, Anastasia, I think the standard has a lot of new changes that are significant. And really, with the publication of the standard in October 2016, there wasn't a whole lot of time for organizations to get moving if they didn't get started in Q4 2016. But to answer your question, I personally believe it's 85611. Kimberly's asking me to repeat the rule for timing of the transition audit. My audit timing is in April, and my certificate expires 9/14/18. This is easy, Kimberly. If your anniversary date is in April, you would transition in April 2018. If you haven't yet scheduled with your PGR scheduler, I urge you to call them and get this done. Okay, 8714 versus 8715, which is rework versus repair. We're getting a question coming in on that. Specifically, where can I find a clear definition of these two and how they differ? Please describe both so I can understand the difference. What I would do, and I don't have it in front of me, is possibly look at ISO 9000 2015 to see if they define them there. But in a general sense, rework process is you're bringing the reworked product means you're bringing it back up into spec to customer or the original specifications. In a repair, you're not able to do that. So you need documented customer authorization for the product to be accepted. I hope that answers your question, John. To be clear, Ms. Ramirez, Rules 5th edition rules did replace Rules 4th edition rules. So 5th edition replaced 4th edition. So again, if you're sitting here listening to this webinar and you have not yet purchased Rules 5th edition, IATF 16949 2016 and ISO 9001 2015, I would do it before you eat lunch. Wait a few more minutes to see if any other questions come in. I've been able to answer all of them that have been entered so far. And again, please type them into the question feature of the GoToWebinar. Always we get questions about the accessing a playback of this webinar or getting copies of the slides. They'll be available for download from our website, which is www.pjr.com, within 24 to 48 hours of the conclusion of today's webinar. Somebody's asking again where you buy the new standards. IATF 16949 2016 and Rules 5th edition. So 2 out of the 3 can be purchased from AIAG.org. ISO 9001 2015 can be purchased from ASQ, or I typically go to the International Organization for Standardization itself, which is ISO.org, to purchase them. Okay, Elizabeth, I think you're asking that you're pursuing IATF certification for the first time. If you're pursuing certification, initial certification, thanks for clarifying, for the very first time, there essentially is no deadline. You can get it done when you get done because you don't have an existing certificate to transition by the deadline. If you're looking to go TS 16949 first, and to be honest, I don't know why anyone would want to do that at this point in time, so late in the game, you have to do that prior to the 1st of October 2017. But if you're a new organization looking to get certified for the very first time, there is no deadline. Okay, so somebody's saying we're a new plant, clarification of the question I just asked. Elizabeth, you want to make sure that you're familiar with their requirements in Rules 5th edition related to new sites, and you want to make sure that you're appropriately pursuing either a certificate or a letter of conformance. And a letter of conformance is covered in Section 514. 5.14 of Rules 5th edition, beginning on page 38.
because if you don't have 12 months of automotive production data or you're not yet on a bid list, you would only qualify for a letter of conformance. Wait a few more minutes to see if any other questions come in. Okay, John's saying, regarding page 6 on the second set of slides, GM and Honda, we are in the situation. So it looks like you supplied a GM and truck light. Truck light has been ignored during the previous audit. Will that change now? If for truck light you're making automotive parts, John, truck light is, as a customer, will no longer be ignored. They're part of the scope of your audit. We'll wait just a few more minutes to see if there's any other questions. And I look forward to seeing all of you at the subsequent webinars in this 4-part series, July 19th, 26th, and August 2nd. And again, www.pgr.com will allow you to register for these webinars, as well as download a copy of the slides and a recording of today's webinar. Okay, folks, that appears to be it. I thank you for your time today, and I hope you found this webinar helpful.